The containment field flickered once, then died completely. Krell lifted its massive head from the floor where it had been lying for hours, eyes narrowing as the blue shimmer that had caged it for 6 long months vanished into nothing. The creature rose to its full height, nearly 12 feet of armored muscle and predatory grace. Its 4 powerful legs carried it forward slowly at first, testing the space where the barrier had always been. Nothing stopped it. A low rumble built in Krell's chest, somewhere between a growl and a cry of relief. 6 months. 6 months since the silver-suited beings had taken it from its home world, separated it from its 3 offspring. The young ones had barely reached their 2nd season of life, still learning to hunt, still needing guidance and protection. Every day in this metal prison, Krell had thought of them. Every night it had called out with sounds that echoed off cold walls and received no answer. The academy, they called this place. A massive structure floating in the darkness between stars, where beings from across the galaxy studied creatures like Krell. Dangerous species, they said. Too aggressive for civilized space. The words meant nothing to a parent separated from its children. Krell moved faster now, claws clicking against the smooth floor. The corridor outside the containment cell stretched in 2 directions. The creature lowered its head, drawing deep breaths through specialized organs that could detect scent particles across vast distances. There, faint but unmistakable, the smell of its young ones carried through the recycled air of this artificial environment. An alarm began to wail, harsh and grating. Lights in the walls flashed red. Krell ignored them, following the scent trail with single-minded focus. The corridor branched and twisted, but the smell grew stronger with each step. Heavy footfalls echoed from somewhere behind. The silver-suited beings were coming, but they would not stop a parent from reaching its offspring. 2 security officers rounded a corner ahead, weapons raised. They shouted words in a language Krell did not understand. The creature did not slow. One fired a pulse of energy that splashed harmlessly against Krell's armored scales. The other dove aside as Krell charged past, one swipe of a massive paw sending the first officer crashing into the wall. Krell did not stop to see if the being still breathed. Nothing mattered except the young ones. Director Talvis watched the security feeds from the command center, his 6-fingered hands gripping the console edge. The Draviscan had broken containment during a routine system update. A failure in the power grid had dropped multiple barriers simultaneously, but only Krell had noticed fast enough to escape before emergency backups engaged. "Seal all corridors leading to Habitat Wing 7, Talvis ordered. His species had run the Galactic Behavioral Studies Academy for 3 centuries. They prided themselves on understanding dangerous creatures, on finding ways to integrate them into civilized society. But some species proved too violent, too unpredictable. The Draviscans fell into that category. Director, the creature has already breached 2 security checkpoints, an assistant reported. Containment teams are moving to intercept. Talvis studied the feed showing Krell's rampage through the station. The creature moved with terrifying speed for something so large, shrugging off stun weapons like insect bites. But something in its behavior caught his attention. Krell ignored every side passage, every open door. It followed a direct path with purpose. "Where is it heading?" Talvis asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Habitat Wing 7, sir, where we keep the juvenile Draviscans." Talvis felt his blood chill. They had separated parent from offspring as standard protocol. Young predators were easier to study, to socialize, to potentially rehabilitate. The adult had been deemed too dangerous, too set in its ways. But perhaps they had underestimated the bond between Draviscan parent and young. "Get everyone out of that wing," Talvis commanded. "Seal it from the outside once the staff evacuates. If the creature wants to reach its offspring, we contain them all together until we determine the next step." Krell crashed through another security checkpoint, this one unguarded. The beings had given up trying to stop it directly, which showed wisdom. The scent of the young ones filled Krell's senses now, so close that the creature could almost hear their calls. 6 months of separation would end soon. Whatever happened after, whatever price these captors demanded, did not matter. A large door marked with symbols Krell could not read stood at the end of the corridor. The creature lowered its shoulder and charged. The door crumpled inward with a screech of tortured metal. Krell tumbled through into a large open space, recovered its footing, and froze. This was not a containment area. No cages lined the walls. No force fields divided the space. Instead, soft materials covered parts of the floor. Structures made of wood and rope stood in corners designed for climbing and play. Colors decorated the walls, bright and cheerful. And there, in the center of it all, sat the young ones. But they were not alone. A creature unlike anything Krell had seen sat among the three juveniles. It stood upright on two legs, barely reaching 6 feet in height. Skin instead of scales covered its body, pale and vulnerable looking. The young ones climbed on this creature, chirping happily. One curled in its lap, making the contented rumbling sound that juvenile Draviscans used when feeling safe and loved. Another gnawed playfully on the creature's arm covering, while the third pushed a round-colored object toward it with obvious invitation to play. The strange being looked up at Krell's entrance. Its face showed no scales, no armor, no natural weapons. Just soft features, large eyes, and an expression that seemed impossibly calm given the circumstances. It raised one limb slowly, palm outward, and made gentle sounds with its mouth. Krell's mind struggled to process what it witnessed. These were its children, the offspring it had crossed through fire and pain to reach. But they showed no fear of this alien creature. Instead, they treated it the way young Draviscans treated pack members, with trust and affection. The strange being stood carefully, keeping its movements slow and non-threatening. More sounds came from its mouth, soft and rhythmic. The young ones chirped in response, clearly comfortable with this creature's presence. Behind Krell, heavy footsteps approached. Security forces gathering outside the broken door. But the creature inside made no move to flee or fight. It simply stood there, one hand resting gently on the nearest juvenile's head, waiting. Krell's parental instincts screamed conflicting commands. Protect the young. Remove the threat. But what threat existed here? The offspring showed no distress. If anything, they seemed healthier and happier than Krell had ever seen them. The strange being took one small step forward, still making those gentle sounds. And something in Krell's ancient predatory brain recognized what it heard, even across the vast gulf between species. The sound of someone speaking to beloved children. David Reed had faced dangerous animals before. Growing up on Earth, he had worked with wolves, bears, and big cats at various wildlife rehabilitation centers. He understood the language of predators, the way they moved and thought and assessed threats. But nothing in his 28 years had prepared him for standing in a room with an adult Draviscan that could tear him apart in seconds. His heart hammered against his ribs. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the climate-controlled environment. Every survival instinct screamed at him to run, to call for help, to put distance between himself and the massive creature blocking the doorway. But David had learned long ago that running from a predator only triggered chase instincts, so he stood still, hand resting on the head of the smallest juvenile, and kept his breathing steady. Krell watched the strange two-legged being with confusion that bordered on pain. The creature showed fear. That much was obvious from its scent. Yet it did not flee. It placed itself between Krell and the young ones, not with aggression, but with quiet determination. A protector's stance. The juveniles seemed oblivious to the tension. The middle one, always the most playful, bounded over to Krell with excited chirps. It pressed against its parent's foreleg, then turned back toward the strange being as if to say, "Look who came to visit." The youngest followed, making the high-pitched sounds that meant happiness and safety. Only the eldest remained with the two-legged creature, looking between parent and this new friend with what might have been concern. David saw his opportunity. Moving slowly, he knelt down and picked up a translator device from the floor where he had set it earlier during playtime. His hands shook slightly as he activated it. The device had been programmed with basic Draviscan sounds based on Academy research, though David had no idea if an actual Draviscan would understand the synthetic translations. "I am David," he said clearly, letting the device process his words into a series of low rumbles and clicks. "I take care of your children. They are healthy. They are safe." Krell's head tilted slightly. The sounds from the small device in the creature's hand resembled Draviscan speech, though the accent was terrible and the phrasing awkward. But the meaning came through clearly enough. "I will not hurt them," David continued. Behind him, he could hear security forces setting up positions outside the broken door. Director Talvis was probably watching everything through cameras. If this went wrong, if Krell attacked, they would flood the room with enough firepower to bring down the creature. And David would likely die in the crossfire. "I know you want to protect them. So do I. The juveniles seemed to sense something important happening. They quieted down, the middle one settling between Krell's front legs while the youngest climbed onto David's shoulder. The weight of the creature there, claws gripping his shirt, could easily have been fatal if the young one lost its balance. Instead, it nuzzled against David's neck, making soft rumbling sounds. Krell's eyes fixed on this display. The young one, so small and vulnerable, treated this alien being as family. The scent markers were clear. The juvenile had rubbed against this creature many times, sharing scents in the way of pack bonding. This was not a captor. This was something else entirely. David made a decision that would either save his life or end it. He walked forward slowly, the youngest still perched on his shoulder. 3 steps brought him within striking distance of Krell. At this range, the adult Draviscan could kill him before he drew another breath. Instead, David sat down on the floor. The gesture spoke volumes. In the language of predators across countless worlds, lying down or sitting was a sign of non-aggression, making oneself smaller, less threatening. David had done this countless times with Earth animals, showing them through body language that he meant no harm. When they brought your children here, they were scared, David said softly, the translator converting his words. They would not eat. They scratched at the walls. They cried out at night. He paused, watching Krell's reaction. The creature's eyes had narrowed, but not with anger. With understanding. With shared pain. I asked to help them, David continued. I sat outside their cage for days, just sitting, talking, letting them learn my voice, letting them see I would not hurt them. The youngest chirped from his shoulder as if confirming the story. Slowly, they learned to trust. I gave them choices. I gave them space. I gave them the respect that intelligent beings deserve. Krell lowered itself to the ground, massive body settling into a resting position. The middle juvenile immediately climbed onto its parent's back, happy to have both of its favorite beings in the same space. The eldest, more cautious, stayed near David but kept looking at Krell for reassurance. I have 3 brothers, David said, not knowing if the translator could convey the concept properly. When we were young, someone hurt the youngest. A bad person. The rest of us found him crying and alone. We stayed with him. We protected him. We did not leave until he felt safe again. The translator clicked and rumbled. Krell's eyes focused intently on David's face. I understand what it means to protect family, David finished quietly. Your children are not prisoners to me. They are young ones who needed care and kindness. I gave them what they needed most. The same thing every child needs. Love. The word translated into a Draviscan concept that meant pack bond, protection, affection, all merged into one. Krell understood. This fragile creature with no claws or armor or natural weapons had given the offspring something the Academy never could. Had given them something Krell itself had been unable to provide while locked in a cage, a family member who stayed. Security forces outside the door tensed as Krell moved. But the creature did not attack. Instead, it extended one massive paw slowly toward David. The human understood. He reached out with his own hand, so small by comparison, and placed it on the armored limb. Skin touched scale. 2 entirely different species connected by shared love for 3 juvenile Draviscans who chirped happily at the sight. Director Talvis watched from the command center, his expression one of shock. In 300 years of Academy operation, nothing like this had ever occurred. A human, barely more than prey by galactic standards, forming a bond with one of the most dangerous predators in known space. Sir, what are your orders? An assistant asked. Talvis continued watching the screens. The adult Draviscan had curled its body protectively around both the juveniles and the human, creating a family unit that defied every protocol and expectation. Stand down, Talvis said finally. Let them be. We need to understand what we are witnessing here. This human has accomplished something we thought impossible. In the habitat room, David let out a breath he had been holding. Krell's paw remained under his hand, warm and solid. The juveniles played around them both, delighted to have their family complete at last. Thank you, David whispered, knowing the translator would convert it. Thank you for trusting me, Krell rumbled a response. The translator offered an approximation. Thank you for loving them. 3 hours passed before anyone dared enter the habitat room. David sat with his back against Krell's side, the massive creature serving as both furniture and guardian. The juveniles had exhausted themselves playing and now slept in a pile, the smallest one using David's leg as a pillow. The middle one snored softly, a sound like distant thunder. The eldest kept one eye half open, watching the door where security forces waited. Director Talvis finally stepped through, moving carefully. His species, the Quelon, stood nearly 7 feet tall with crystalline formations growing from their shoulders and arms. To most species, they appeared imposing. Next to Krell, Talvis looked small and fragile. "May I approach?" Talvis asked. His voice transmitted through a translator similar to David's. David glanced at Krell. The creature's eyes tracked Talvis, but showed no immediate aggression. "Slowly," David said. "Let Krell see your hands. No weapons." Talvis spread his forearms wide, showing empty hands. He took 3 steps forward and stopped, giving Krell space to assess him. The director had studied predator behavior for decades, but theory and practice were vastly different things. Standing before an adult Draviscan made every survival instinct in his body scream warnings. "I owe you an explanation," Talvis said, directing his words to both David and Krell. "About why we separated parent from offspring. About why we thought it necessary." "I know why you did it," David replied. His voice was calm but carried an edge of anger. "You thought Krell was too dangerous to rehabilitate. You thought the young ones had a better chance of integration if they never learned hunting and aggression from their parent." He shifted slightly, careful not to wake the sleeping juvenile on his leg. "You were wrong." Talvis felt shame, an emotion rare for his species. "You are correct. We made assumptions based on limited data. Draviskans attacked 3 survey ships before we captured these specimens. They killed 17 crew members. We classified them as unredeemably hostile." Krell rumbled, a sound that made Talvis step back involuntarily. David placed a hand on the creature's foreleg, a gesture of comfort. "Did you ever ask why they attacked?" David said. "Did you consider that maybe those ships were in Draviscan territory? That maybe Krell and its kind were defending their home and their young from alien invaders?" The words hit Talvis like physical blows. In all the years of Academy operation, they had focused on studying dangerous species, categorizing them, determining if they could be made safe for civilized space. They had never seriously considered that some species might have legitimate reasons for their aggression. "Tell me about your work with the juveniles," Talvis said, changing the subject to safer ground. "Show me what you accomplished." David carefully extracted himself from the sleeping pile of Draviskans. The youngest grumbled in its sleep but settled against its sibling. Krell watched David move but did not follow, content to guard the sleeping young ones. David walked to a console on the wall and pulled up records. Holographic displays showed graphs and video footage. "When I arrived 8 weeks ago, the juveniles were in distress. Look at this." He played a video of the 3 young Draviskans in a standard containment cell. They paced constantly, scratched at walls, and made high-pitched distress calls that sounded like crying. Standard protocol said to feed them remotely. "Minimize contact and observe from a distance," David continued. The next video showed him sitting outside the containment field, just sitting quietly while the juveniles watched him. "I spent 6 days doing nothing but sitting there, talking to them, reading to them, letting them learn that my presence was safe." Talvis watched footage of David's hand slowly reaching through a small gap in the field, offering food. The eldest juvenile approached cautiously, sniffed, and took the food from his hand. Small steps. Building trust. "After 2 weeks, I requested the containment field be lowered during my visits," David said. "Your staff thought I was insane. But predators respond to confidence and respect. Fear makes them aggressive. Kindness makes them curious." More videos showed the progression. David teaching the juveniles simple words through the translator, introducing toys and climbing structures, creating a routine of feeding times, play times, and rest times, treating them not as specimens but as intelligent beings with needs and personalities. "The middle one is an explorer," David explained, pointing to the video. "Always the first to try new things. Fearless. The youngest is cautious but affectionate. Needs more reassurance. The eldest is the thinker, watches everything, figures out how things work." Talvis studied the data graphs showing dramatic improvements in all health markers. The juveniles ate properly, showed normal play behavior, and vocalized in healthy ranges. All because a human had treated them with dignity. "Why does this work?" Talvis asked. "Your species has no natural armor. No claws, no venom or energy weapons. You are prey by every biological measure. Yet you succeeded where our trained specialists failed. Why?" David smiled, a human expression that showed teeth but meant happiness rather than aggression. Because we understand something that maybe other species forgot. Power is not about being the strongest or most dangerous. Real power is about connection, about seeing another being and recognizing that they want the same things you want: safety, purpose, family. He turned back to Krell and the sleeping juveniles. Earth had hundreds of predator species: bears, wolves, big cats, sharks. For thousands of years humans feared them, killed them, tried to eliminate them. But then we learned. We learned that predators are not monsters. They are just trying to survive, and when you show them respect, when you prove you are not a threat, they can accept you, even trust you. Krell had been listening through the translator. The creature rose slowly, careful not to disturb the young ones, and approached David and Talvis. The director fought the urge to flee as the massive predator loomed over them, but Krell lowered its head, a gesture of respect in Draviscan culture. Through the translator, it spoke for the first time since entering the habitat room. You protected my young when I could not. You gave them more than food and shelter. You gave them happiness. This is a debt I cannot repay. David reached up and placed his hand on Krell's snout between the eyes, a vulnerable position for both of them. You do not owe me anything. This is what families do for each other. We protect the ones we love. Talvis watched this exchange and felt his understanding of the galaxy shift. For 3 centuries, the Academy had approached dangerous species with the assumption that control and containment were the only solutions. This human had proven there was another way. David Reed, Talvis said formally, I would like to offer you a position, not as a handler or keeper, as a teacher. Show our staff your methods. Help us understand what we have been doing wrong. Help us find better ways to work with species like the Draviscans. David looked at Krell, then at the sleeping juveniles, then back at Talvis. I will accept on one condition. Krell and the young ones stay together. No more separation. If you agree to that, then yes. I will help you change the way this academy operates. Talvis extended one crystalline hand. Agreed. Let us begin something new. David shook the offered hand, Human and Quellen joining in partnership. Behind them, Krell rumbled approval. The sound woke the juveniles, who immediately began playing again, climbing over their parent and their human friend with equal enthusiasm. Outside the habitat room, security forces stood down. Across the academy, word spread quickly. A human had accomplished the impossible. 2 weeks after Krell's escape, the academy looked like a completely different place. David walked through the corridors with a datapad in one hand, and the youngest Draviscan juvenile following at his heels. The creature had bonded most strongly with him, and refused to be left behind during his daily rounds. Staff members who once hurried past the dangerous predator now stopped to greet the young one, offering treats and gentle pats. The transformation had not been easy. David entered Conference Room 7, where 20 Academy specialists waited. They represented different species from across the galaxy, each an expert in xenobiology and behavioral studies. They also represented years of failed protocols and dangerous encounters with the beings they were meant to help. Thank you all for coming, David began, setting down his datapad. The juvenile curled up at his feet, content to nap during what would likely be a long meeting. Director Talvis asked me to share the methods I used with Krell's family. But before I do that, I need you all to understand something fundamental. Everything you think you know about dangerous species is probably wrong. A Thorian specialist named Rena shifted uncomfortably. Her species resembled Earth's insects, with multiple limbs and compound eyes. With respect, human, we have studied dangerous beings for centuries. We have protocols based on extensive research. And how many of those beings have you successfully rehabilitated? David asked quietly. How many were released back to their homes? How many formed positive relationships with Academy staff? Silence filled the room. The answer was obvious in its absence. David pulled up holographic images of various species currently held at the Academy. This is Grond, a Thorian warrior captured after he killed 3 handlers and injured 12 others. Your protocols say he is beyond redemption, too violent to ever integrate into civilized society. He shifted the image. This is Sheila, a Vascarian mother who attacked a research vessel, classified as irrationally aggressive. Held in isolation for 7 months, more images appeared. Dozens of beings, all labeled as dangerous, all locked away. What if I told you that every single one of these beings is not violent by nature? David said. What if their aggression is a response to how we treat them? That is absurd, another specialist interjected. Grond killed 3 of our people. How is that our fault? David turned to face the speaker. How did those handlers approach Grond? Did they come with respect? Did they give him choices? Or did they come with weapons and restraints, treating him like a monster that needed to be controlled? The room erupted in arguments. David let them talk, let them vent their frustrations and disagreements. The juvenile at his feet woke briefly, assessed that no danger existed, and went back to sleep. That simple trust spoke volumes. Finally, Director Talvis raised one crystalline hand for silence. Let David finish. We agreed to listen. David nodded his thanks. I am not saying there are no dangerous beings in the galaxy. Some creatures are genuinely hostile, but most of the beings here are like Krell. Parents protecting their young, warriors defending their territory, individuals who lashed out because they were afraid and alone. He paused. You cannot rehabilitate someone by treating them as less than a person. You cannot build trust through fear and containment. He spent the next hour explaining his methods, simple concepts that somehow the galaxy had forgotten. Speak calmly and consistently. Offer choices rather than demands. Show respect through body language. Never approach with weapons visible. Give space and time. Recognize emotional needs beyond just physical care. It sounds too simple, Rena said. Surely it cannot work with all species. It will not work with all species, David admitted. Some beings are too different, their needs too alien for humans or any other species to meet. Some are genuinely dangerous and should never be approached, but many, maybe most, just need someone to see them as individuals rather than problems to be solved. Can you prove it? Another specialist asked. Can you show us this works with someone other than the Draviskans? David had been waiting for this question. Yes, I would like to work with Grond, the Thorian warrior that everyone believes is beyond help. The room exploded again. Working with Grond was suicide. The warrior had proven his willingness to kill. No one had been able to get within 10 feet of him without triggering violent responses. If you die human, your methods die with you, Talvis pointed out. Is this risk worth it? If I die, you will know my methods were wrong, David countered. But if I succeed, you will know that change is possible for even your most difficult cases. That seems worth the risk. 3 days later, David stood outside Grond's containment cell. The Thorian warrior paced inside, a massive being that stood 8 feet tall on 4 powerful legs. His species had evolved for combat, with natural armor plating and limbs that could crush metal. Grond had been a decorated soldier before his capture. Now he was a prisoner, angry and isolated. David had studied everything the Academy knew about Thorian culture. He learned their concept of honor, their warrior traditions, their pack hierarchies. Most importantly, he learned that Thorians valued directness and strength of spirit over physical power. He deactivated the containment field. Staff watching from observation rooms gasped. Director Talvis had authorized this against strong protests from the security team. If David died, the blame would fall on everyone who allowed this to happen. Grond stopped pacing, his compound eyes fixed on the human who had just removed the only barrier between them. The warrior could kill this fragile creature in seconds. Every instinct urged him to attack, to punish these captors who had taken his freedom. But David did not run. He stepped into the cell, letting the field reactivate behind him. Trapped in here with a killer with no escape. My name is David, he said through a translator programmed with Thorian language. I know you are a warrior. I know you have honor. I am not here to fight you. I am here to talk, Grond charged. 4 powerful legs drove him forward faster than David could react. The human would die in seconds, but David did not raise his arms to defend himself. He did not scream or try to flee. He simply stood straight, meeting Grond's eyes, and spoke one word in Thorian. Please. Grond stopped inches away, claws raised. The human stood perfectly still, showing no fear despite the terror David felt coursing through him. This was either courage or foolishness. In Thorian culture, the distinction mattered greatly. Why should I not kill you? Grond demanded. You are my enemy. You keep me caged like an animal. I am not your enemy, David said quietly. I did not cage you. Others did. I am here to offer something different. A choice. What choice? Grond's voice dripped with contempt. What can you possibly offer me? David reached slowly to his belt and pulled out a small device. He placed it on the ground between them. This is a communicator. It connects directly to the command center. If you activate it, you can speak with Director Talvis. You can negotiate terms. You can demand better treatment. You can ask to be returned to your homeworld. Grond stared at the device. Why would they listen to me? Because I will make them listen, David said. Because I believe you deserve to be heard. Because treating you like a mindless beast has failed, and perhaps treating you like the intelligent warrior you are will succeed. You risk your life for this? For me? Grond lowered his claws slightly. Yes, David said simply. Because every being deserves dignity and respect. Even if you kill me right now, at least you will have had one person acknowledge that you matter, that your voice deserves to be heard. Grond studied the human, such a weak creature. No armor, no natural weapons, yet standing here offering trust, offering respect. The warrior's anger, burning hot for months, wavered. If I take this device, if I speak with them, will they listen? Or is this a trick? David met Grond's gaze steadily. I cannot promise they will agree to everything you want, but I promise you will be heard. I promise to fight for better treatment. I promise that things can change. Grond reached down and picked up the communicator. His claw could crush it, could crush the human. Instead, he activated it. I am listening. Director Talvis's voice came through. Then hear me, Grond said, his voice carrying the weight of months of rage and pain. I am not your pet. I am not your experiment. I am a warrior of the Thorian Legion. If you wish to hold me here, you will treat me with honor. In the observation room, staff members watched in stunned silence as human and Thorian began negotiating. David stood calm and steady, translating cultural concepts, helping both sides understand each other. And slowly, impossibly, a warrior who had killed 3 handlers began to see a path forward that did not involve violence. News of David's success with Grond spread beyond the academy faster than anyone anticipated. Within 3 weeks, representatives from the Galactic Council arrived unannounced, demanding to see this human who could tame monsters. Director Talvis found himself hosting 5 council members from different species, all skeptical that one primitive being from an unaffiliated world could accomplish what centuries of galactic science had not. Councillor Bresh, a Quellan like Talvis but with far more crystalline formations denoting his age and rank, stood in the observation room overlooking the main habitat area. Below, David sat with Krell and the 3 juveniles while Grond stood nearby watching. The Thorian warrior had not become friendly exactly, but he had stopped threatening violence. More remarkably, he had requested to spend time outside his cell, and specifically asked to observe David's work. Explain to me how this is possible, Bresh said coldly. A Draviscan that killed survey crews now plays with a human. A Thorian warrior who murdered 3 trained handlers now follows this David like a student. Are we to believe this is not some trick? Some human manipulation? Talvis had expected this reaction. Come with me. See for yourself. They entered the habitat through a secure door. David looked up from where he was teaching the youngest juvenile, a new game involving colored blocks. The creature had to figure out which block fit into which shaped hole. Simple problem-solving exercises that kept young minds active. Director? David greeted, standing respectfully. The juvenile chirped in protest at the interruption, but quickly became interested in the newcomers. Counselors, welcome. Bresh studied David with barely concealed disdain. Humans stood so small compared to most galactic species. Weak, slow. Their technology was primitive, their worlds barely unified. That such a being could succeed where advanced species failed seemed impossible. Show us your methods, Bresh demanded. We wish to understand how you have accomplished this. David nodded slowly. Of course. But first, a demonstration. Grond, would you join us, please? The Thorian warrior approached. Several council members stepped back instinctively. Grond stood over 8 feet tall and massed more than all 5 council members combined. His species was known throughout the galaxy as fierce fighters, honorable but dangerous. Grond was held in isolation for 7 months, David explained. He attacked anyone who approached. He refused food for days at a time. He was classified as unredeemable. David looked up at the warrior with clear respect. Tell them what changed, Grond. In your own words. Grond's translator device clicked as he spoke. This human did something no one else did. He saw me as a warrior, not as a beast. He offered me respect when others offered only restraints. He gave me choices when others gave only commands. But you killed 3 handlers, Counselor Vess interjected. She was Arcanian, a species known for logic and precision. How do we know you will not kill again? Those handlers came to my cell with weapons drawn. Grond replied, his voice steady. They used pain compliance devices. They treated me as an animal to be broken. When I defended myself, they called me a monster. He gestured to David. This one came with no weapons. He stood before me, vulnerable. He spoke of honor and choice. Which approach would you respond to, counselor? The question hung in the air. Vess had no answer. David picked up where Grond left off. Your protocols assume that dangerous beings must be controlled through superior force. But force breeds resentment and resistance. Respect breeds cooperation. It is that simple. Nothing is that simple, Bresh countered. Species across the galaxy have different psychologies, different needs. Your approach cannot work with everyone. You are right, David agreed, surprising them. Some species are too different. Some are genuinely hostile. Some cannot or should not be rehabilitated. But many, perhaps most, just need someone to try a different approach. Someone willing to see them as individuals. Counselor Lin, a Farian whose species resembled Earth's marine life, gestured toward Krell. The Draviscan attacked 3 survey vessels. 17 crew members died. How do you justify protecting such a creature? David walked over to Krell and placed his hand on the creature's side. Did anyone ask why those attacks happened? Did anyone investigate whether those survey vessels entered Draviscan territory? Whether they posed a threat to Draviscan nests and young? Silence, I thought not, David continued. You saw a dangerous predator. You never considered that Krell might have been defending its home, defending its family, the same way any parent would. He looked at each council member in turn. You made Krell into a monster by treating it like one. When I treated Krell like an intelligent being capable of love and reason, it responded with love and reason. The youngest juvenile had finished its puzzle, and now brought the completed toy to show Lin. The counselor froze as the young Draviscan chirped happily, obviously wanting praise. David smiled. That is Krell's child. Born as a predator, raised with kindness. It knows no violence because we showed it no violence. Go ahead. You can acknowledge its accomplishment. Lin hesitantly reached out and patted the juvenile's head. The creature rumbled with pleasure and bounded back to its siblings. Such a simple interaction, yet it demonstrated everything David had been trying to explain. I have a proposal, David said, addressing all the council members. Let me train human specialists to work throughout your academy system. We will focus on species that have been classified as unredeemable. Give us 6 months. If we succeed, you expand the program. If we fail, you can dismiss humanity as naive and foolish. Either way, you lose nothing. Except possibly several human lives, Bresh pointed out. We accept that risk, David said firmly. My people understand danger. We lived alongside predators for millions of years. We learned to coexist. Let us share that knowledge. The council members withdrew to discuss. Talvis stayed behind with David, Krell, Grond, and the juveniles. You are gambling with human lives, the director said quietly. If your specialists fail, if they die, there will be consequences. There are always consequences for trying to change things, David replied. But the alternative is to keep doing what you have been doing. Locking away intelligent beings. Treating them as problems to be contained rather than individuals to be understood. That has its own consequences. 3 hours later, the council members returned. Bresh spoke for them all. Your proposal is accepted with conditions. You may train 20 human specialists. They will work under academy supervision. Success will be measured not just by lack of incidents, but by meaningful rehabilitation. Do you accept these terms? I do, David said. Thank you, counselors. You will not regret this. As the council members left, Vess paused at the door. Human, one question. Why do your people care so much about dangerous beings? You could live safe, comfortable lives. Why risk yourselves? David thought for a moment before answering. Because a long time ago, we were the dangerous beings. We killed each other. We destroyed our own world. We were violent and scared and alone. Then we learned that strength is not about being the fiercest predator. It is about lifting each other up. About seeing past our fears to find common ground. He looked at Krell and Grond. Every being deserves that chance, even the ones that scare us. Vess nodded slowly and left without another word. That night, David sat with Krell and the juveniles in their habitat. Grond had been granted permission to stay nearby, and the warrior had chosen to remain close to the human who first showed him respect. The youngest juvenile slept in David's lap while its siblings wrestled, playfully. We are about to change the galaxy, David said softly to Krell. I hope we are ready for... Krell rumbled a response that the translator converted. The galaxy changes whether we are ready or not. Better to guide that change than be swept away by it. David smiled. When did you become a philosopher? When a human taught me that there is more to strength than claws and teeth, Krell replied. Now rest. Tomorrow brings new challenges. David closed his eyes, surrounded by beings that the galaxy feared. Yet here, in this moment, he felt safer than he had ever felt before, because he had learned the truth that changed everything. Every monster is just someone who was never shown a better way. 6 months changed everything. David stood on the observation deck of the newly renamed Interspecies Cooperation Initiative, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. The Academy had been completely reorganized, its mission transformed from studying dangerous species to facilitating genuine understanding between different beings. 23 human specialists now worked throughout the facility, each paired with beings once deemed beyond help. The success rate shocked even David. 17 of the 23 specialists had formed meaningful connections with their assigned species. 4 remained in progress, showing promising signs. Only 2 had ended in failure, and even those taught valuable lessons about which species truly could not integrate. More importantly, none of the humans had died. A few injuries, certainly. Broken bones, cuts, 1 severe concussion. But every human survived because they understood what David had taught them. Respect saves lives. Fear causes death. Behind him, the door opened. Krell entered, now moving freely through the station without restraints or guards. The 3 juveniles, grown significantly larger, followed their parent. They had bonded so strongly with David that separation caused distress for both human and Draviskans. The council had granted special permission for them to remain together indefinitely. The ceremony begins soon, Krell said through the translator that now hung permanently around its neck. Are you prepared? David smiled. As prepared as I will ever be. It feels strange receiving recognition for just treating others with basic decency. It is not strange, Grond said, entering behind Krell. The Thorian warrior had become David's unofficial bodyguard, a role he took seriously. You showed the galaxy something it had forgotten. That deserves recognition. The ceremony was being broadcast across all council worlds. David was receiving the Harmony Award, the highest honor the Galactic Council could bestow. It recognized beings who advanced peace and understanding between species. In 300 years, only 12 individuals had received it. David would be the 13th and the first human. They made their way to the main assembly hall where thousands had gathered. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the space, all wanting to witness this moment. At the center of the stage stood Councillor Bresh, who had opposed David's method 6 months ago. The Quellon's expression was difficult to read, but his body language suggested respect. David Reed of Earth, Bresh announced as David approached the stage. 6 months ago you proposed an idea that seemed impossible. You claimed that respect and understanding could rehabilitate beings we had deemed dangerous. You staked human lives on this belief. He paused. You were proven correct. The hall erupted in sounds of approval from dozens of different species. Chirps, clicks, rumbles, musical tones all blended together. David felt overwhelmed by the response. Bresh continued. Your work has freed 17 beings who were imprisoned indefinitely. More importantly, it has changed how we approach every species we encounter. You have given us a new path forward. He presented David with a crystalline sculpture representing harmony between different species. David accepted it with shaking hands. I did not do this alone, David said into the translator that would broadcast his words to everyone present. Krell taught me that love transcends species. Grond taught me that honor exists in all forms. Every being I worked with taught me something. This award belongs to all of them. Then let them join you, Bresh said. Krell walked onto the stage with the juveniles. Grond followed. Then came others, Sheila the Veskarian, no longer isolated but thriving. Nyx the Sorvelian, who had been so traumatized he refused to move, now walking with confidence. Karn the Brutilian, Yessa the Frelan, Dor the Melkanian, 17 beings who had been prisoners, now free because someone chose to see them differently. They stood together on the stage, predator and prey species mixing without aggression. An impossible sight 6 months ago. Now it was reality. I want to tell you all something, David said, his voice carrying through the hall. When humans first reached our moon, We looked back at our planet. We saw one small world, blue and fragile. We realized that all our borders, all our differences, meant nothing from that perspective. We were just one species on one tiny world. He gestured to the beings around him. Now I stand here and see the same truth on a larger scale. We are all just beings trying to survive in a vast universe. Our forms differ. Our languages differ. Our cultures differ. But underneath, we all want the same things: safety, purpose, connection, family. The youngest Draviscan, now nearly as tall as David, pressed against his side. He placed his hand on its head affectionately. Some of you fear humans because we are new, because we are different, because we do not follow the old ways. David continued. Good. The old ways trapped beings in cages and called it science. The old ways saw differences as threats. We offer something new. We offer the understanding that every being has value. Every voice deserves to be heard. Every life matters. Earth formally requests membership in the Galactic Council, came a voice from the back of the hall. David turned to see Ambassador Phillips, Earth's representative, stepping forward. This had been planned but kept secret until this moment. We believe humanity can contribute to the galaxy in meaningful ways, not through weapons or technology, but through our ability to bridge divides, to see past fear and find common ground. Councillor Bresch looked at his fellow council members. Silent communication passed between them. Finally he spoke. This is highly irregular. Earth has only just begun space exploration. Your technology is primitive by galactic standards. Your people are not unified. By every traditional measure, you are not ready. David's heart sank. They were going to refuse. However, Bresch continued, traditional measures have failed us in many ways. Perhaps it is time to try something different. The Council will vote on Earth's membership. But I believe the outcome is no longer in question. The vote took place immediately. Species after species voted in favor. When the final count came in, Earth's membership had been approved by an overwhelming majority. Humanity had just joined the galactic community. Ambassador Phillips approached David with tears in his eyes. You did it. You brought us to the stars not through conquest but through compassion. We did it together, David corrected. He looked at Krell, at Grond, at all the beings who had trusted him with their lives. All of us. The celebration lasted for hours. Different species shared food, stories, music. Barriers that had existed for centuries crumbled as beings saw what was possible when fear was set aside. As the night grew late, David found himself back in the habitat room where everything had started. Krell and the juveniles were there, along with Grond and several other beings David had worked with. They sat together in comfortable silence, a family formed not by blood but by choice. What happens now? Grond asked. You have achieved everything you set out to do. You have your recognition. Earth has council membership. What is left? David smiled. Everything. We have proven this works on a small scale. Now we expand. We find every being that the galaxy has written off as dangerous or different. We show them the same respect and understanding. We build a future where no one is judged by their appearance or abilities, but by their character and choices. That will take a long time, Krell rumbled. Perhaps many generations. Then we better get started, David replied. The youngest juvenile, nearly full-grown now, nuzzled against David's shoulder. The human who had taught it to trust. The friend who had shown it that different species could be family. Outside the window, ships from Earth began arriving. The first wave of humans coming to join the galactic community. Among them would be more specialists, more people willing to reach across the divide between species and offer a hand in friendship. The galaxy was changing, not through force or technology, but through something more powerful, through the simple understanding that every being deserved dignity and respect, that monsters were made, not born, that with patience and compassion, bridges could be built between any species, no matter how different. David watched the ships dock and smiled. The work was just beginning. There were thousands of species in the galaxy, countless beings who had been judged unfairly, locked away, forgotten. Each one deserved what Krell and Grond had received, a chance to be seen as more than their worst moments, a chance to be understood. For what it is worth, Krell said quietly, I am grateful the survey ship found us. I am grateful for the separation, for the pain, for all of it, because it led to this moment, to this new future. David looked at his friend, this magnificent creature who had once been labeled a monster. I am grateful too. You taught me that family is not about what you look like or where you come from. It is about who stands beside you when everything is difficult, who trusts you with their young, who sees you at your worst and chooses to stay anyway. The juveniles chirped softly, settling down to sleep. Grond took his usual position by the door, ever watchful. Other beings found their comfortable spots in the habitat that had become home for this unlikely family. And David sat among them, a human surrounded by predators, and felt completely safe. Because he had learned the greatest truth of all. The only real monsters are the ones we create by refusing to see past our fears. Everything else is just someone waiting for a chance to be understood.